All right. Good evening, everyone. I am Jordan Latham, Vice President of the South Belt Houston chapter of Jack and Jill of America Incorporated. And on behalf of our president, DeAndrea Virgil, who cannot be here with us this evening, it is my sincere pleasure to welcome you all to tonight's webinar. Tonight, we continue our webinar series started in December that focuses on improving the mental health of Black families. The first webinar was on December 7th and featured Mr. Willie Moore Jr., syndicated radio host and mental health advocate, who shared his personal experiences of adoption, finding his birth mother, and seeking mental health counseling, and Dr. Alana, America's only trauma psychiatrist, who offered great information about how our brains work, shape our actions, and how we can make healthy mental health changes for our future. If you weren't able to join, no worries. I highly recommend you take some time to view by visiting the recording on YouTube. Today's program will be a follow-up and will focus more on the new year and what we can do as Black families to be prepared for the challenges of 2022. As we enter the new year and make our resolutions, it will be important to address the trauma we've experienced over the past 18 months, understand how this has impacted Black families, and share solutions and strategies to help us start the new year mentally healthy. We will also have a few poll questions sprinkled throughout to learn more about what's on your mind. Here's the first one. Go ahead and launch that poll for me. What are your 2022 New Year's resolutions? All right, we'll give you a few more seconds to respond and then we'll close the poll. All right, we got enough answers in there, Terrence? Let's see. Okay, so most of you said get physically healthy, and then it looks like the next in line is get mentally healthy. So you're in the right place. So excited to see so many of you on tonight, and we hope you get a lot out of our webinar. Now I'd like to introduce this evening's moderator, Dr. Napoleon Higgins. Dr. Higgins is a psychiatrist in private practice and a member of our Father's Auxiliary. Dr. Higgins, thank you for joining us. I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Jordan. It's great to be here today and to discuss this important issue of 2022 coming up. My name is Dr. Napoleon Higgins. I am a psychiatrist, child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist in Southeast Houston, Clear Lake area, born and raised in the Houston area, been here my entire life, pretty much lived below I-10 my entire life. So if you catch me outside of Houston, trust me, I'll be right back. So it's good to be here with you all to talk about the important issues going on within our communities, Black communities, with our families and with our children. We had such an exciting talk with the last talk that we did on December 7th. And so today we're going to look at moving forward into 2022, understanding that in order to be successful and to move your family through the next year, it has to be an intentional process. It is not by accident that you become physically healthy or mentally healthy, or you improve your finances or anything like that. It's not by accident. It has to be intentional. So my thought is that if you're attending this with us tonight, that means that you are intentional in your direction and you're making a very good start. So understanding that we had a lot of juggling going on to get through the Christmas and the New Year, out of 2021 and into 2022, understanding that you have to be in the mindset that whatever happened in 2021 is now over. That is now done. You cannot redo anything in 2021. Now, some people may tell that they did something that they didn't do, which is probably just a flat out misstatement of the truth. But the fact is that whatever happened then, that is over. Now you have to move on to the next year. So many of us have had losses and many issues. The virus still goes on. We're still having the stresses with our family, but we have to say to ourselves, what did we learn from that period of time? And now how do we move forward into the next? So it's important to make sure that you identify the stressors that are causing problems in your life, and then coming up with an intentional plan. What is the barrier to you losing weight? What is the barrier to you eating right? What is the barrier to your mental health? What are the things and who are the things that you need to remove in order to move forward? And what are the people and things you need to add to grow into the next year? So it's going to be important to make sure that you identify the stresses so that you can work on the stresses, because if you don't, chronic stress causes despair and hopelessness, which can lead you down a poor mental and physical path, and is to the detriment of everyone around you when you're not focused on moving forward to the next year. So, but what we want to start with is 6 things plus 1 bonus of what everybody should be doing right now. We are in the midst of the deadliest virus of our generation, all right, of our generation. That's what we're in the middle of. So I want to stress to you as a psychiatrist, as an MD, and as a medical professional, it's important that if you have not gotten your vaccine, please get your vaccine. 87% of all hospitalizations are people who are not vaccinated. Only 5% or less are people who are vaccinated and have the booster. So get your vaccine. 2, wear your mask, all right, over your mouth and your nose. 3, whenever possible, stay 6 feet apart. 4, avoid large crowds that do not have ventilation. Number 5, consider self-testing before you go into large gatherings. There are many testing centers, and now I'm starting to see the testing where you can get the rapid testing even over the counter, or even order it on Amazon or even Walmart. Number 6, make sure you wash your hands, keep yourself clean. And the bonus is, please repeat these steps as often as needed in order to keep you and your family safe. So I would like to introduce our first speaker for the night. That is Mrs. Stephanie Craddock. She is a mother of 4 amazing children and a family mental health advocate. She is project manager for the Houston Methodist and has worked in healthcare industry for 14 years. She is a proud military wife that works hard to create balance and structure during her husband's deployments in the Middle East. Her family faced several challenges during COVID. She will share her family story and journey toward better mental health for us today. So the first question, as she introduces herself, I would ask this question, Stephanie. Could you introduce why you became so interested in mental health and what prompted you on this journey to be a mental health advocate and to address the community? Please unmute yourself.
I was ready to jump right in. Good evening, and thank you so much, Dr. Higgins, for that wonderful introduction. As he said, I'm a mom to 4 amazing children, 3 teenagers, and 1 9-year-old. So it's always, beautiful managed chaos in the house. And also, I'm a lover of all things art, music, and movies. And I have a lot of. And I'm really about, working on supplier diversity as kind of my thing. And that's what I'm working on at Houston Methodist. So I always like to introduce and say things that are not associated with my title, the things that kind of reflect my character and interest, the interest in terms of introduction. But my family's journey and our experience really almost starting up until the day of January 2021 last year really allowed me and really motivated me and really was the catalyst for me to really be an advocate for mental health. Really last year, me and my dad and my parents, we actually got our COVID vaccine first dose on January the 15th. A couple of days later, both my dad and myself were diagnosed with being COVID positive, and we had pneumonia in both lungs as well. So my dad's condition continued to decline. I would say it took me a while, about 2 months, to kind of really climb out of it, but his condition was really acute, and he ended up passing away actually from the virus and from pneumonia on March the 4th. Go to the next month, I lose a great aunt. Go to the next month, I'm gonna lose a cousin. Let's fast forward to September, I end up losing a cousin and a aunt. The cousin died from COVID. My aunt actually died from being heartbroken that she had lost her child to COVID. So when you unpack all of that grief / trauma of 2021, it was just, it was clear we needed to do some things. We need to unpack, we need to sort through that trauma, sort through our emotions, and really allow our 3 teenagers a voice. These are young men. I have a daughter, I have 3 teenagers. And so we needed to really, really make mental health a priority, because not only am I fighting, I'm actually a COVID long hauler, I'm actually fighting prolonged symptoms of having COVID all the way from almost a year ago. I have to take, iron injections, have to see a cardiologist. There's a myriad of things that I'm actually dealing with my health. So as you can see, my mental health and making it a priority was, I actually needed to actually be able to stay alive and function and really provide and be the person I needed to be for myself and for my family. There is advocacy, I think, starts, at home. And like I said, I had to put myself in therapy, and also my sons. I have 3 Black, teenagers, and, it's a hyper masculinity thing about not showing your emotions and not showing your feelings. And I wanted my sons to be able to unpack the trauma of losing their best friend and grandfather, and unpack what happened to their mom and all of the loss that occurred in 2021. So that trauma actually peeled back a lot of layers, Dr. Higgins, and it allowed us to see other areas in our life that we were grieving. It allowed us to see how we were interacting, filtering information through our world, and really and it allowed us to really get to to really understand our emotions and why we were feeling them and why they were valid. And it's okay not to be okay. And it's okay to have a bad day. And it's okay just to understand and know that what I went through was real. It's not fake. It's still affecting our family. So, just unpacking and kind of going through everything that happened in 2021, I had to make mental health a priority to be able for my family. I think, a lot of the times, we want to get together in families and talk about anything else but mental health. But, there were times in my life, there were times this past year I was feeling depressed, being the wife of a military mom, a military wife, and who husbands is back and forth in the Middle East, during this difficult time, adding an additional layer of stress that only, certain people in the military, I guess, at times can really understand that, your husband is gone, he's gone to a dangerous place, and he's experienced life or death situations at the same time. So in order for me to heal, I had to feel comfortable unpacking all of this and writing and creating boundaries and establishing healthy habits. And my kids had to see me establish healthy habits. That's really important as we're navigating all of this grief and trauma. And actually, it was my husband who actually noticed that I was actually suffering from PTSD and had anxiety. There were times I would be walking in a house and I would just fall to the ground and start sweating. And I felt like my world, I was just suffocating. And I felt like everything was coming, everything was just too close. And I just like, I just didn't have enough room. So seeing my children, seeing me go through that, my husband seeing me go through that, it's just, as I said, I really, really had to focus and make mental health, a priority. I was casual about it at first, but my family's experience and my experience with seeing me battle COVID actually moved it to the top even more than physical. I mean, what the mind does, everything else will follow. And so that was my family's journey in a nutshell, in regards to why I made mental health, a top priority and became an advocate. So it's one of the things I talk about with my friends, my family, and my sons. I want to know how they feel. I want to start off, and make sure they're using their words. And actually, all of my teenagers were very reluctant into starting therapy, and now it's something that they actually enjoy and look forward to. It's someone else outside of mom and dad. I can unpack my feelings. They can help me understand what I'm talking about, and they can help me feel. They can help me process this information. So I need to, so they see myself going to therapy, doing the hard work, and it's not always perfect. It's hard work that definitely pulls back the scab and it exposes other areas that need some work, right? Because that's what therapy does. It's looking at the entire you underneath the microscope and really just pulling back other things, that you need to work on. So my sons are seeing their mom do the work. And so I'm hoping that I'm raising sons that turn into men that know that mental health is important, and that there's a sense of hyper masculinity. It's just not real. And I think we let society impose a lot of those constraints on us, and it's just not healthy for us, and it's just not real. And it's really time for us, especially with all that's went on in the last 18 months, to really shed that and let's move forward, and let's continue to move our families and ourselves forward in the right direction.
So Stephanie, that is exactly what we're here to talk about tonight, is the issue of mental health and all minds matter and getting our families connected with the understanding. How do you recommend a person who's on the, they know that they need to address this in their homes and their families. How do you recommend that family members start that conversation?
I think it was for me even for my mom and my brother, is just creating a sense where they're safe and there's no judgment, and even if I have, and just giving my mom or my family member kind of like my thought process on why I went to therapy, my story and why I was hesitant. I think that more people are able to open up when they feel, when you're safe. You got to have that safety net there, and feel that you're safe, and you have to know there's no judgment, and just starting about, how are you feeling today? Or I noticed, that you acted, your reaction was such a manner. How are you feeling? Why? It's really having a connection with that person, and really talking about something that may be similar or familiar between that individual, and then allowing that person to open up. So it's almost like having a plant, and you're constantly pouring into that relationship. That person eventually is going to feel safe with you. And then seeing your vulnerability and how you open up, and how, hey, I thought it wasn't cool, but let me tell you how it helped me do X, Y, Z. And this is what I want for you. And I know it can benefit you and help you. So once you can create that safe environment, I think that family members or friends are more apt to open up to you. So I think that's really important.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephanie. And I have many questions for you, and I know we have a lot of questions in the chat. So we'll get back to you. I want to bring up next Mr. Daniel Gillison, who is the CEO of the National Alliance of Mental Illness. NAMI, as they call it, is the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization dedicated to building better lives for millions of Americans affected by mental illness. And so this is a great segue to Dan. And Dan, if you could take yourself off mute for us. Yeah, this is a great segue to Dan, because Dan is the head honcho. He is the man when it comes to grassroots organizations and in the leadership position to help families connect with one another, to help guide them through this mental illness journey that every family is impacted by. Every family is impacted by mental health. So Dan, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the work that you do at NAMI?
Thanks a lot, Napoleon, Dr. Higgins, and to all of you all on this evening. I just bring greetings from NAMI and from our board. And to all of you all, I stand on the shoulders of many with this opportunity and with that wonderful introduction that Napoleon gave me in terms of leading this organization. This organization is 42 years old, National Alliance on Mental Illness. It was started in 1979 in Madison, Wisconsin by two mothers who had just been told that their young adult sons had schizophrenia, and it was a result of how they were being raised. So at that time, those mothers decided to advocate and to begin the advocacy. So this organization started by mothers in 1979. The first meeting was in Madison, Wisconsin, the first convening, 276 people, most of them mothers, and some dads that were brought along, but mostly mothers that were advocating for their young people. So that's where we started. Our body of work includes over 22 different programs and initiatives reaching out to communities which are free, which are family to family, peer counseling, and other programs, ending the silence for high school students, and ending the silence about stigma, saying, okay, it's to the point that was brought up earlier, it's okay to not be okay. And one of the things that we see in a poll that was done, for over 63% of Black Americans feel that if you have a mental health situation, if you will, that it's a sign of weakness. We've got to move away from that. And as the World Health Organization has coined, there is no physical health without mental health. So us having this conversation tonight is incredible. And I am just so pleased to be a part of this. NAMI's work is across the United States. We have over 648 organizations, much like you have chapters, we have affiliates, we have state organizations. There's 27 affiliates in Texas, and then there's the state organization. Many of you may be familiar with the Greater Houston NAMI office, and that is run by Angelina Brown Hudson. Our work, again, 648 organizations, many of them run by volunteers, grassroots, and many of them, we like to walk the talk. And what we mean by that is that we are trying to improve the lives of individuals and families with lived experience, with mental health lived experience. What that means is that we also challenge our board, that 75% of our board has to be representative of individuals and or family members with lived experience, because we want to walk the talk and we want to make sure that there's passion and there's continuity in terms of why we do what we do and the strength of what we do. So that is who we are. That's what we do. I can walk you through a lot of the programming in terms of that. But also in the spirit of this, I want to back up a second. And Dr. Higgins spoke about stay healthy. My wife and I just actually navigated COVID. We were both diagnosed the Monday before Christmas. And for both of us to navigate that over the holidays was tough from a medical standpoint. It was also tough from a mental standpoint. I love the industry of people. I love the industry of interacting with people. And to know that I had to quarantine, could not see our daughter and couldn't see my 88-year-old father and some friends that were visiting from LA and New Orleans, that was mentally challenging, as well as the physical challenge and the exhaustion of all of it, the fever, the coughing, the congestion, and the headaches, all the things that Napoleon, Dr. Higgins is trying to say, hey, do these things so you don't go through that. And then having to do the oxygenation in terms of making sure the levels didn't get too low. So I challenge all of us to do that. In terms of NAMI, we're here to make a difference. We work across communities and everywhere. Stigma is critical. I would tell you one of the things that is top of mind with us for 2022 is 988. 988 legislation and 988 operationalizing a new number for suicide prevention and crisis response. Right now, there's a 10-digit number for the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. Well, that number will now become a 3-digit number for either suicide prevention and or mental health crisis. Right now, we call 911 for a mental health crisis. As I've said in regional and national events, I, as a Black parent and an uncle, I cannot, in all good conscience, call that number if I have a loved one in a mental health crisis. So this 988 number is very important to me professionally and personally. And what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to provide a service where when you call the number, they know that you're calling because there's an individual that's having some type of a mental health crisis. So the response that we're looking for across the country with that is a mental health response and not a law enforcement response. So that is what we're looking for. That number goes live in July the 16th of 2022. However, the number in and of itself is not enough. What we need is we need the support on the front end in terms of the 24/7 call centers. Then we need the mobile crisis units, and we need the staff that has been trained to respond, a crisis response staff. With a peer counselor and 2 other different types of skill sets on that triage team that respond with the skill sets that are needed. And then we need a place to take that person. And there's too many communities across the country that don't have the front end of that or the back end. So while this number will be real on the 16th of July, what NAMI's working on and a lot of organizations on is how do we operationalize it with the whole infrastructure of services that will be needed. So that's some of what we're working on now. And there's quite a bit more, but 988 is critically important. And it will be something that has to be represented in the different counties, such as one of the largest counties in the United States, Harris County. I'll close this by saying the other thing about COVID for me is that my wife is adopted and was raised for a period of time in New Orleans. And here's the net is that she doesn't know her medical history. So she can't respond with any answers when said, what are the pre-existing conditions in your family? So these kinds of situations with COVID can impact families in tremendous ways. By the way, born and raised in Washington, D.C., went to college in Baton Rouge, Louisiana at Southern University. And my first love affair was with Houston and McGregor Park from being a tennis player playing at Southern, and my first match was against Texas Southern, and then Prairie View and some of the other schools. So I'm very connected to, and I remember seeing a young lady playing there at McGregor Park, Zena Garrison, as a little girl, and her coach John Wilkerson kept saying, "Keep watching her. She's going to be somebody special." And I saw her every year for 4 years. So you guys hold a special place in my heart. Thank you for what you do for your young people, and I can speak more about NAMI if you'd like. Back to you.
Thank you, Dan. It's always good to see you. Also, Dan is my fraternity brother. I don't know if y'all could tell how ice cold or the icicles gathering up on the screen, on your screens as he was speaking there. But good always to see you. Now, you're trying to get me fired up when you started talking about the incarceration versus the criminalization of mental illness and how they are using that to drive the prison industrial complex. So it is so important, as we had just talked about, and that we continue to make sure that we take care of our people, because they're using mental health and the lack of treatment as a way to fund and push that cycle. So that 988 number, I see you putting the brand new, the new. It hasn't even come out yet. It's like the 2023 BMW 7 Series. It hasn't hit the market yet, but you hit us with that right now. That's going to be very important. It's going to be important for us to engage and understand how to use that so that we can deter those mental health services from criminalization to actual medical treatment. And that we didn't always criminalize mental health. This is something new that has been started that we definitely want to work on. One thing I did want to ask you, Dan, though, is how best can the Black community engage in NAMI? I know that NAMI has you as the lead, but there's been some chronic issues with trying to get us to engage in mental health, but then trying to engage in national organizations that are directly out there to help us and our families. How do we make that connection?
Well, first thing is, anyone interested, first of all, personally reach out to me. Secondly, we have a process in terms of how you go about that. And that is in terms of going to NAMI.org/local. And you will find some information in there in regards to the NAMI closest to you. And then you begin the process there. There's a process where if you're interested in starting an affiliate, you fill out some basic paperwork, and we just begin from there. And then that paperwork is submitted to the state, and they do a vetting to begin the process. So that's the way you get involved. We're also trying to connect the dots in our communities of color, indirectly, meaning that and what I'm trying to say to our organization is, we don't have to be the best and brightest. We have to connect with the best and brightest. And we need to make sure that we're using organizations in the communities that are trusted advisors, trusted organizations in the community, and take our programming through them, i.e. the Jack and Jills and some of the other organizations that are vested in the communities, the urban leagues and some of the other groups like that. We did something with Morial last year, the president and CEO for Urban League. So I'm saying we're working with a couple of different organizations now, the Steve Fund, Silence the Shame, and some other groups that also have grassroots in our communities, and they have trusted advisors. The other thing we're doing is we have some programming that we do called FaithNet, the mental health community. The original first responders were our religious leaders. Whether they are imams, whether they are priests, whether they're Baptist ministers, whether they're community leaders, these are our true first responders who are always there to help the community. So what we are trying to do is, where we see that, and that is a better resource than us, is to actually lace up our shoes and work with them and bring our assets to work with them in the community. So you can reach out to me, dgillison@nami.org. You can reach out to the site I gave you earlier. Those are two ways to get involved with NAMI. And the other thing we're looking at, Napoleon, is actually providing partnerships and creating strategic partnerships in communities. And I want to speak just for a moment on something that Napoleon said about the overcriminalization of the mentally ill in the justice system. 9 out of 10 times it is us. As some previous work that I did, I worked for the National Association of Counties, 3,069 of them in the United States, and I visited the jails in many of them: Cook County, the Twin Towers in LA, Shelby County, Harris County. I've been to a lot of the jails. Let me just put it that way. And the thing about it is that I have seen with my own eyes who's in those jails. And that's what we want to change in a number of ways. Our strategic plan at NAMI has 3 pillars: getting help early, which is what this is about: young people getting help early. The next one is the best possible care. And the third one is to address the overcriminalization of the mentally ill in the justice system. So those are the 3 pillars of our strategic plan, and we are really focused on that. And I'm focused on it. So there in Texas, you had Mr. Walter Warren in Killeen, Texas. On one day, the police that responded had been trained in what is called crisis intervention training, knew what to do, knew what language to use. They took him to the hospital, brought him back. The hospital released him. He came back the next day. His family called and said he's in crisis, and please send a crisis, an officer trained in CIT. Regrettably, they didn't, and that officer did not have the language. Mr. Warren followed him out of the house, just talking, but not aggressively. Regrettably, that officer shot him in front of his family. That's why 988 is so important. That's why what Napoleon just talked about in terms of the overcriminalization of our community and the justice system. There's work, and we got to get to people early. You can have a 14-year-old that has the first signs of some type of a mental illness. Do you know it's not actually diagnosed and treated until that young person is 25? So they're in the middle of the beginning of their adult life, and all of a sudden the diagnosis and the treatment is started. And it's revealing itself at 14 and 15 years old. So we have a lot to do, but thanking you for asking us to talk with you about it. Every opportunity we get, we want to voice this, and we got to remove the stigma. It's like an orthopedist, and you have a young person that has a basketball, baseball, whatever kind of injury, and they're in a brace. It's visual, you see it. These scars are invisible, and we got to address them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dan. And let's move forward to Dr. Kai Lang, DNP RN and executive coach. Dr. Lang is a national board certified health and wellness coach, a licensed registered nurse, and a certified executive coach. She is owner of Emotions Embrace, which provides coaching services to existing and aspiring leaders. So Dr. Lang, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself? And then also, we would love to know, why is executive coaching important for starting the new year off right?
Yes. Hi, Dr. Higgins, and thank you for your question. So as you mentioned, yes, I'm a registered nurse, a licensed a health and wellness coach, as well as an executive coach. And as a nurse, I know firsthand the effects of emotional health can have on a person, both physically and mentally. And this is why I created Emotions Embrace for Coaching. We use a unique approach to coaching services that leverages leadership coaching as well as health and wellness coaching. And the goal for this type of coaching approach is to support our clients with not only embracing their emotions, but learning from them. We feel it is important to start with an understanding of their emotional triggers first, so then they can take steps to modify those connections that don't necessarily serve them in a positive way. And I think to answer your second part of your question, I believe you had asked about New Year's resolutions. People have a tendency, like many people in January, it's a time to reflect and reset. And for some people, that does include New Year's resolutions. So as you go through the process of identifying the areas of your life that you'd like to work on, I recommend asking yourself if it would be beneficial to have a dedicated support system to help you along the way. Similar to a personal trainer who's there to support you in getting toned arms or changing your physique and maybe getting that six-pack you always wanted. A coach is similar to that, but just to support you in other areas of your life.
Great, great, great. And how do we get our community to engage more in executive coaching? I know me and a team of friends who are working on a big project, we had never done it before. Even as psychiatrists, we had never done it before. How do you see that this could be impactful?
Yeah, well, I think one thing is to have the awareness that this kind of service is available. I think some people know more about mentoring, and that's more of a common theme that we may have mentors to help us in our career and advancements in that area. But when you think about coaching, it is definitely a different approach, very similar, but different approach from mentoring. So coaching is more of where a person can can give you guidance, but it's also feeling that the client is in control of their life. They have the answers and the resources. It's just helping them to see things from a different perspective and allowing them to answer their own questions and navigate through their own challenges. So it is definitely a more of a supportive system compared to giving a client the blueprint to say, this is what I've done, this is what's been successful for me, and then that person following it, which may not end up in the same outcome as it would be for the mentor that is given, kind of telling their story.
And what are some quick tips that we could have to launch into an excellent 2002 in this new year?
Yeah. So great question. The first tip that I always say with start off with my clients is to start off with your vision statement. Imagine if you had a magic wand and you removed any barriers or self-doubt. Where would you see yourself in the next 3 to 5 years? Make sure you write down every area of your life, not just career, but relationships, health, or any aspect of your life. And you'll write those down on a piece of paper or a journal. I've personally found it helpful to write those statements in a positive format. For example, instead of saying I drink less soda each day, you would then in turn say I drink more water. So the process of focusing on what you're gaining compared to what you're losing is a form of what we call positive psychology, and it tends to hold more weight to helping you focus on the positive instead of the negative. So secondly, you would take that vision, that larger vision statement, and write out your 3-month goals. So we know that sometimes it can be difficult to see what's beyond those 3 years. So we focus on 3 months that will then align with your larger vision. Okay. And then along with the 3 months, before I move on to the next one, is the question that you want to ask yourself is, what can you be doing, or what would you like to be doing consistently in the next 3 months? And so that will be ultimately your 3-month statement. So again, you have your vision statement, your 3-month statement, and then you take both of those and write out your weekly goals. Okay. And you would want to write those down using a SMART format, which is an acronym for simple, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. And pretty much is your blueprint for the small steps that you'll follow that again align with your 3-month goals and ultimately your larger vision. So the good news is, because it's your life, you can modify your vision in your vision statement at any time. So I actually recommend that you modify or review your vision statement every 3 months, just to make sure it's still relevant and consistent with what you want. And if not, you can modify it. And remember to give yourself a little grace and celebrate every milestone along the way.
Great, great, great. So I'm hesitant to making this my own coaching session. But I got your information, so we know how to contact you. If you could put the SMART steps into the chat, that would be great. That would be great.
Absolutely.
All right. So thank you so much for that. I know I've used executive coaching with a team of writers that I work with, and it did so much to get us back on track, to get us from the ideas to the practical steps of how to get things accomplished. And we really need that for 2022. And I'm going to get back to you to ask you some of them questions about being a nurse practitioner and health and the journey that we need to make to get ourselves ready for the new year. Next up, we have Dr. Deidre Frazier. She's a licensed psychologist and owner of Psychology Works private practice in Lake Jackson, Texas. Dr. Frazier and her staff provides testing and therapy services for children, teenagers, and adults. She specializes in working with troubled youth and assist in evaluation services. So Dr. Frazier, now me and you, as a child psychiatrist, and we have a child psychologist, we could just go back and forth about what we're seeing right now. It's been crazy, for lack of a better way of saying it, for the year of 2020, 2021, and the things that our children are going through for coming up in 2022. So what things would you say you're seeing with children during this COVID journey, during this COVID period?
Okay. First of all, I just want to say thank you, Dr. Higgins, for having me. Before I get into answering the question, I just want to express how grateful I am to be a part of, this program tonight, and not only to be a part, but also to be with you guys. First of all, Mr. Gilson, I'm sorry, the head honcho over at NAMI. If you guys don't know a lot about NAMI, just being able to have him here with us and to know the power of what that program and what that organization does for families, it's just, I'm just so elated and so appreciative to be a part. So thank you so much, Mr. Gilson, for taking your time out to be with us. You guys, if you have anybody in your family, if you know of anyone who has a family member who's dealing with mental illness, any type of like psychological, mental health conditions, and maybe they just need support, they don't know where to go, NAMI was created for them. So let's spread the word and let them know. And also too, just real quick, Stephanie Craddock at the beginning, she started us off, and just to hear her story and to hear some of the things that she's been through. Stephanie, I've seen you at different events and different things, with the kiddos here and there, and had no idea that your year, you were dealing with all that this past year. And sometimes you guys, like, we just don't know what people are dealing with. We see them, we talk to them, we say hello, we chit chat and have small talk, but you don't know what people are actually dealing with inside sometimes. And so thank you for being so brave and for, sharing that with us. And, just everyone, and Kai, to know that you're doing your executive coaching thing. And, I talked to you and I know you, and I didn't even really realize that you're, that you're also engaged in that too. So it's just grateful, again, to be a part of this program. So now kind of getting back to my question, I wanted to just share that because I'm just so excited. I just get so excited about mental health. But I think you were asking a question, Dr. Higgins, about what are some of the things that I've been seeing here throughout this year, maybe that's different from the past. To be honest, I have been super, super, super busy this past year, these past couple of years, you guys. And one of the things that I've noticed, some of my most common referrals have been related to things like anxiety and depression. And actually, these issues were some of my most common referrals before the pandemic. So that hasn't really changed. It's just that I'm seeing more of it, if that makes sense. So actually, as a matter of fact, like this past year, as I'm kind of going through the end of the year and kind of doing all my numbers and, everything like that, what I've seen is that this past year, I've had like the highest rates of referrals for children, adults, families, couples, like everybody. They're just kind of, I'm just busting out of the walls with referrals. And I've just been seeing more people these past 2 years than I have seen in my practice's history. We see all different populations at my particular office. So we work with children, we work with adults, we work with families, but I particularly specialize in children. So some of the things that I've seen with children that are maybe unique to that particular population that I wasn't seeing as much of before, I'm getting a lot of referrals for like learning disability evaluations, you guys. So like what we know is that, kids over the past, couple of years, their education has been interrupted. And whenever we were kind of first, everything was kind of first shut down and everybody was in virtual school, the parents, you were home, with your kids. And so you were up close and personal to their learning. So you were seeing some of the things that maybe you hadn't really noticed before in regards like your kids and how they may be struggling with some things. And so you're just kind of paying attention to things that maybe you just didn't notice before. And then also too, when the kids went back to in-person learning, we've noticed that there's lots of gaps. A lot of these kiddos are behind, and they're kind of right now still trying to catch up. And this has happened for lots of different reasons. For some, the kids, some of them just didn't really do anything whenever they were in virtual learning. We may have thought that they were, doing things, but they actually weren't really doing the work. And then sometimes the parents weren't always engaged. And even if the parents were engaged, you're not a teacher, right? So like you're still not given like the same, quality of, like learning that maybe they would have gotten. So then that leaves us with a lot of kids now who are just like really, really struggling academically. So I've done evaluations for like learning disabilities, dyslexia, ADHD, math, all kinds of things like throughout my whole entire career, because I'm also a school psychologist as well as a clinical psychologist. But here recently, I have been seeing a lot of families coming in because their kids are really, really falling behind in school, and their parents are really trying to see, like, what can I do? Does my kid need some special services or accommodations and things like that? So I have been seeing that kind of unique to the child population. Other things I've been seeing that's kind of grown with the child population is also like behavior management issues too. So like, in addition to like them having anxiety and depression, we're also seeing when the kids were out, we were spending a lot more time together as a family because we were all like out of work, the kids were out of school, so we were together. So sometimes there was some conflict there, with parents and children in regard to just like managing their behaviors and, their moods and different things like that. So we've been kind of seeing an increase in those types of referrals as well. So yeah, so kind of in a nutshell, we've been busy. We're seeing a lot of the same things that we've seen before, but it seems for me in my practice, I'm just seeing a lot more of it.
Yep. I know the tide is so in right now, and this is probably one of the busiest, say, couple of years I've had, and it's been 15, 20 years of this, and it's been heavy. Do you feel as if, do you think people and families are getting used to the pandemic, and things are getting better? Or do you see that things seem to be the stress and anxiety seems to be getting worse as it drags on?
That's a really good question. And, there's kind of lots of layers to that. Now, one of the things that I will say that I feel like is getting better, and Mr. Bilson, touched on this a little bit, and you touched on this a little bit at the beginning, is that it seems like there's more focus on mental health. We still have a long way to go, you guys, but people are paying attention. I can't even recall how many, webinars I've been a part of over the past 2 years, and, how many, panels I've been on, because people are wanting, us to talk about mental health. They're open to it. They're more receptive. Just from a cultural perspective, from a societal perspective, I've been seeing that, yeah, there's still a stigma there, and we do have to work on that. But it seems like people are getting more comfortable than what I've seen in the past with having that conversation, like Stephanie talked about. And also too, I'm seeing that it's more visible. And what I mean by that, I'm seeing commercials, about like you can even do like text therapy, and we have virtual therapy. If you can't go to the office, you can, sit in front of your computer and have therapy. There's all types of different resources that were just not there before. And in that sense, in regard to access, I do feel like, yes, I'm seeing more access, and I'm seeing a little more willingness, right, to maybe engage and, kind of talk about it.
Yeah.
Again, we still have a long way to go, but it seems to me, and I even sometimes I'm listening to the radio, like Black radio and urban radio, people are having, conversations. Like I sometimes I hear Charlamagne, like on the Breakfast Club in the morning. He talks about mental health all the time, and so I feel like that's a good thing that, we're starting to hear more of it. But the issues are there, and I feel like some of the issues are getting worse because we have a lot of social problems that are kind of we're starting to see because of us being, quarantined and the kids not engaging and things like that. So it's like, even though we have more access, it's like there's different problems that are kind of being created that I guess is leading to us having more demand for the services. Does that make sense?
And do you see this interest sustaining? Do you feel like we're going in the right direction with this? Like if the pandemic passes, do you feel like we'll go back to being not talking about it much? Or do you feel like this is going to be an ongoing conversation that people are finding to be helpful and impactful?
I'm hoping that it will be ongoing. I'm really hoping that it will be ongoing, and Mr. Gilson maybe can chime in about his perspective. It seems like from a legislative perspective, from a policy perspective, like from a cultural perspective, it seems like there's kind of mental health is kind of integrating itself into our lives in a lot of different ways. And I'm hoping that, I heard, someone say at the beginning, there is no physical health without mental health. It's like, this is a part of our lives that we cannot ignore. And so I hope that it stays and that we embrace the importance of it. It seems like that is something that, I'm kind of hoping that trend continues.
Thank you so much, Deidre. Kai, I did want to follow up with something though that Deidre was talking about, as we had mentioned, the issue of there is no physical health without mental health. How do you see where a lack of good mental health keeps people from being able to attain their goals throughout the year? When they come to you as an executive coach and they have these desires, what do you see that keeps people from engaging and being able to lock in when it comes to their mental health?
So great question. In my opinion, I feel like that mental health and emotional health is the driver that really kind of starts from there to preventing people from moving forward. So your belief system is everything. So if you don't believe that you can, accomplish your goals, whether it's weight loss goals or healthy or stop smoking or any of those behavioral goals, if you don't believe it and what's possible, then it's really difficult for you to, number one, commit to it. And then number two, take steps to get there. So through coaching, it's really asking yourself, what is true about that statement? And sometimes those statements are external factors, meaning, is this something that your family told you, or your colleagues told you, or your friends told you that, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, all of these kind of things? Then with that in mind, it really can stop a person from even attempting to move forward.
Definitely so, definitely so. So what we want to do is move forward with our panel, where I'm going to ask questions, and with all of our panelists can bring themselves up on their cameras. What we're going to do is ask questions, and I want for anyone can answer these particular questions. All right. So we want to get a round robin on our thoughts as a group and as a team on how do we help some of these things. And to go off what something Stephanie has said was the issue of, especially, I'm being a Black male, a Black psychiatrist, is very few of us. All right. It's very few Black people doing mental health, psychiatry, psychology, social work. That we're 2 to 4%. Sometimes the numbers drop down to 1.8%, versus we're 13% of the community. When it comes to this toxic masculinity, how did you get your sons to see past this? Because in our community, we're taught that Black men, we have this rap music, aggressive, hypersexual, drug use, overly violent, and it fits into the stereotype of who Black men are. How do we combat against that and get them to understand that is not, you cannot allow the world to define your Blackness or what Black maleness is? How do you work through that?
Well, thank you, Dr. Higgins. Actually, that's a great question. My dad was a military man, Vietnam veteran. And so my husband is a veteran as well. And he's had several deployments to the Middle East. And I think my dad and also my husband opened up their dialogue with their sons about their feelings and their experiences. And also, there's some things I know that, my boys don't want to talk to mom about, but I'm so lucky that I have a husband who's had PTSD, who's went through therapy, extensive therapy after each deployment. So he knows that having those emotions bottled up, and he knows the type of what they can do and the type of damage that they can do. So my husband keeps an open dialogue with his sons in regards to emotions, his experiences. And also, like I said, advocacy starts at home. So kids are going to model what they see you doing, what's important to the parent. So we're making and we're opening those conversations and making that important, and having them the utmost important in our household, and having the fathers really start that dialogue with their sons. I think we're creating an environment, opportunity for our sons to know that, you're not crazy because you need mental, you need to talk to a therapist. That's actually normal. That's somebody you should have in your wheelhouse, just like your sex person, just like your doctors, that's somebody, it's okay to be able to talk. And we want to start that early on. So I really applaud my husband and my dad and the males in our family for actually opening up that dialogue. And really, it's just not something we're going to do in our household. And I'm just glad I have those type of men and have my dad in my life in that manner to be able to lay the foundation for that and really be an example for that.
And we have a question here that came from the audience that actually is addressing that issue. Like, are there tactics that you used in order to get them to address it? Is it the importance of having a male to speak to them? Or what was so often in our community, 70% of Black children are living in a single parent home, and 90% of the time that's a woman. So how do you address your young Black men about that, or what are some techniques, or how did you find that space for them?
Well, representation and, in healthcare matters too. So I will have to, say that my PCP, my pediatrician, are both African-American, and both have them an open dialogue with the children as well too. So, having my doctors also give me access and give me information about other great doctors, because I believe other great doctors run together. So my PCP, who's a Black woman, is going to give me information about a great male or somebody that she knows. But opening that dialogue with the sons it's very difficult because they're not taught to share their emotions, especially with their mom or anybody else. So like I said, it's actually creating that safe environment. And it may not work the first couple of times. You might have to, my husband may talk to my oldest when they're talking about football. So he's actually let his guard down. They're talking about something that's familiar that they both enjoy. And then my husband is going to segue and do his part and segue and start talking about his difficulties and struggles with emotions and being in the military and being hard. And, hey, son, this is what I experienced. This is what I know for sure. I don't want to see you go down that path. I'm seeing you struggle, and it's okay, son. You can talk to me. So a lot of times I see my husband he participates in the activity that the sons like in order to feel comfortable with that dialogue, whether it be football, sports, or whatever. And then he's going to segue into the conversation about mental health and why it's important and why you want to have somebody that, that they talk to. And as the sessions go on, the boys are finding out things that they never really knew about themselves. So they're actually excited to share, things that they're learning about themselves. So once they have that positive experience, they're actually looking forward to going to therapy and sharing and actually, and they're evolving and they're learning about themselves and their emotions. So, having it be a comfortable environment, having it be a someone that they trust. It doesn't always have to be mom. And, that village and a family is so important. Your uncles, your grandfathers, or even a family figure, who's someone that the child looks up to. And I think creating that environment where going to an activity or doing some one-on-one time with them so the boys feel safe, and I think that lets their guard down. And then, and seeing me and their dad talk about therapy and talk about mental health is very important. So I'm just very blessed. And I know, and it's really hard. Village is, having that great village and having those doctors in your life and friends to point you in the right direction is so important. So I hope that helped. If it did, I can expound some more.
No, that definitely helps. And Dan, can you tell us a little bit about, with your work in NAMI, and you talked about started by women, Jack and Jill started by moms. Jack and Jill is moms, all right? Trust me, my wife is one of them. I think she's listening on right now. Jack and Jill is heavily a mom organization. There are some men, but those are typically the ones who got drugged to the meeting or something like that, such as myself. Dan, how would you say that you being you being male, you being a Black male, working with NAMI, how do you address getting more men involved in mental health?
Thanks for the question, Napoleon. I think that it's kind of, you pull them in, but it's it's almost like what happens in executive coaching. You give people a safe place to talk, and you give them a vulnerable opportunity. It's like when we have certain different affiliates that reach out to me and say, Dan, we want to go into communities of color. We don't know how. I've tried to create a safe place and a judgment-free zone for people to talk to me. In terms of Black men, I will tell you that I was in college in Louisiana in 1974-75 as an adult male. And it was the first time I heard my dad said he loved me was after I graduated. It wasn't something that we did as men. And as I grew up, there was a hospital, mental health hospital in DC called St. Elizabeth's. And I remember growing up, it was always, hey, if you don't act right, if there's something wrong, we're gonna send you to St. E's. It's language, it's labeling. And now where we are now, as we've evolved, is being able to have the conversation. What NAMI says is we're gonna meet you where you are, not where we want you to be, but we're going to meet you where you are. So bringing Black men in is being able to say, hey, what do you, it's the power's in the question, not the answer. So we ask folks questions. And with this audience right here, what is it? 1 in 5 Americans live with a mental health condition. So count off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what we're saying is that, hey, we just meet our brothers where they are and say, if it's a group of 20, let's talk about the 5 in here. But not bring you up, but just say, do you realize? And let's talk about what you can do for that next generation. And it's that connective tissue, but it starts with meeting people where they are. And that's what we're doing. And we have brought several young people and men of color into, and you've met one of them, our Chief Strategy Officer, Sherman Gillums Jr., who is a Marine veteran. We brought him into this body of work because he understands from his military experience what the stressors are, and post-traumatic stress disorder and TBI, traumatic brain injury, and all the other things that military personnel deal with. And to that point, the other thing we do is we connect with programs. For instance, we created a program, Stephanie, called Homefront. Homefront is for veterans' families. It's for their loved ones, for resources for that mom who has her husband who has been deployed. What can she do for her family while he's gone? And then what are the things she has to do when he returns, when he's been so removed that it's going to take him a while to connect? So it's our program. So Homefront is a program I want to make sure Stephanie and all the moms know about. And then for the men, we try to create safe places, judgment-free zones, and the power's in the question, and we ask, and we try to take every advantage of talking to brothers about involvement. So hopefully that's the end. And let me just speak to the other thing, Napoleon, because you and I have known each other for years, and I just appreciate you so much in your work. Napoleon is the few of the few. And the other thing we have to do is, and Deidre, I want to say your name correctly because you've been so wonderful to us. So how do I pronounce your first name?
Deidre.
Deidre, thank you. For you, for Dr. Lang and Dr. Napoleon's, we need more of you. So part of this is not just about what we do for ISLES right now in terms of the service we provide. The demand has gone through the roof. The supply is limited. We got to talk to our young people about going into this profession. We got to talk about the next Deidre, the next Dr. Lang, the next Napoleon Higgins. Napoleon should have a class of middle school young men and women who want to follow him, because it's emulating what you see. And that's another part of what we have to do in terms of that work. So I apologize for the sidebar, but I didn't want to lose that thought.
Man, I didn't forget about I was supposed to be moderating. I'm just listening over here. You said a mouthful there about trying to improve the access and the pipeline of our people being able to address our people. And there are facts that Black doctors take better care of Black patients. That's a numerical fact. When they run these EMRs, because it's all electronic now, outcomes are better. Now, that does not mean, now, if you have a great doc who's not Black, please stick with a doc who works well for you. All right. So I'm not saying that the person has to be Black for you to have good medical care, because that's not true. But statistically, the numbers do come out great for us as a people and as individuals. Dr. Frazier, that was a question from a pediatrician asking, how do I get parents and families to understand that mental health is important? Like, as the pediatrician, the pediatrician is understanding that primary care treats more mental health than psychiatry does. when it comes to medication management, identifying symptoms, because mental health is physical health. So how do you help a pediatrician help the families understand that it's important to pay attention to their children's minds as well as their bodies, especially during this pandemic season?
That is a great question. That's a really great question. One of the things that I think would be helpful for the parents or the families or whoever the audience is to understand like the symptoms. So how we know like that something is going on is by like seeing what's happening, like as a result of that underlying issue, right? And so what I notice sometimes especially when I talk to communities of color, especially Black men, even more so than women, is that when you ask questions, even like if they were to do like a survey, if I were to ask them, do you feel like you have ever been depressed before, or something like this, like, no, I've never been depressed. But then I may ask them questions like straight from like the DSM about like, do you have this? Do you have that? Oh yeah, I feel like that every day. Or, oh yeah, this is just like another Tuesday afternoon. And it's like you check off all the symptoms of a clinical depression. But if I ask you if you're depressed, you say, oh no, I'm not depressed. And so you don't always identify that you are exhibiting some type of issue because that's just your normal life sometimes. You feel what I should say is like that has become like the norm for you until you don't even feel like it is a problem. And so sometimes you have to really educate people to let them know that this thing that you're experiencing, like even Stephanie said before, like, she would come in, sometimes she would just kind of fall out or you feel hot or, whatever. It's like that is a symptom of another issue, right? And so then if you educate people on symptoms, then maybe that'll kind of open up their minds to the idea of seeking help, because now they realize, oh, I'm not supposed to be feeling like this after all.
That
Definitely.
one thing I want to mention.
I think, go ahead, please.
I'd like to mention something about their strength and vulnerability. And you saw that with Naomi Osaka, you saw that with Simone Biles, you see that with the basketball player Kevin Love. So there's strength and vulnerability. And I would say that, again, allowing folks to be a little vulnerable and sometimes say, we say, how you doing? Sometimes I start doing now and say, how are you not doing? And it just stops them in their tracks. That, how are you? What do you mean? How are you not doing? So Dr. Frazier, I don't know if that, but, and we also in the workplace, mental health in the workplace has become a big driver, and we got a lot of CEOs in the private sector that's focused on it. Now, let's be honest, they're focused on it for the development of their workforce and the retention of their workforce and the productivity of their workforce. But they're recognizing that our young people coming in with expectations that you're going to have different benefits that are going to address that. So they're okay with it. So these CEOs are now looking for mental health solutions and programs like the simple ones. There's we talk about intensive care units, but there's a program, I See You, and you say to Dr. Frazier, when we first started working together, Dr. Frazier, I do see you. You're not invisible to me. You were lively. You were this and that, and right now you're not. What's going on? So all I'm offering to you is the questions and how we ask them and how we identify, to your point, are you depressed? Well, that's a label. I can be a lot of things, but I'm not that. So it's yeah. So thank you. Sorry, Napoleon, I just wanted to bring that up.
Oh, definitely so. Definitely so. And Dr. Lane, if you could tell us some things that, when we're talking about overall health, pediatricians, mental health, what are some healthy things that we can engage in right now, so far as eating habits, lifestyle habits, to make sure that we're going into the new year the right way?
Yeah. So great question, because I'm sure that's one of the New Year's resolutions for many people as far as eating healthy, being more physically active. So one thing I would start off as far as the diet is the American Lifestyle Medicine recommends a whole food plant-based diet. So for many people who may hear that, it's like, oh, do I need to become vegan and give up all meat? No, that just means that you just need to incorporate less processed foods and more whole foods, which includes more healthy fruits and vegetables. Now, two things that come to mind as I say that is, yes, eating more vegetables is great, but you want to make sure you're cooking and preparing it the right way as well. So if you're, I'm a Southern girl from, I think Mr. Gillison mentioned about from New Orleans. I'm a New Orleans girl. I like my salty food and those kind of things, but be mindful of how you prepare those items. If it's too much salt, too much sugar, those kind of things. So that's one thing. The other thing is what we call SOS, which is salt, oil, and sugar. Those are the three things that will lead to probably an unhealthy lifestyle. So that could be high blood pressure, high cholesterol, those kind of things. So salt, oil, and sugar, the more you can minimize that, the better that you can be a little more healthier as far as your dietary intake. The other thing I would add as far as physical activity is, again, I mentioned earlier about being committed to your goals. So you want to set realistic goals, and depending on where you are in your activity level now, start small. So if you say, set a goal that says, I'm going to get on a treadmill for an hour a day, ask yourself, are you really committed to that? And I would say rate on a scale of 1 to 10, how committed are you? So if you are a 6 or less, then you're probably not very committed to that goal. So you might want to either modify that goal to something that says, okay, well, I feel I can commit to 30 minutes instead of an hour, or maybe not as frequent as far as the days of the week. And then just start small and then master that and then increase as you go. So I think those two things can definitely help with a healthier lifestyle.
So why so often do people fail at their New Year's resolutions? People start with the fire on they get their black eyed peas in, we get our cabbage in, we get our cornbread or our cornbread or whatever we may call it. And then we start off, we go to the gym, and then, by MLK, you know what I'm saying? Why do people fail by MLK to get their New Year's resolutions done?
Yeah. So 3 things. Number 1, as I just mentioned, the commitment level. They're truly not committed to that goal. That's number 1. Number 2 is they really haven't established a plan of how they're going to get there. And number 3 is they don't believe that it's possible. So as I mentioned earlier, that belief system is, I don't want to say it's everything, but it's a significant part of it. So if you don't believe that it's possible that you will, lose 20 pounds or be able to run a mile or whatever that is, then mentally that will stop you before you even get started. So
wow.
Having that belief system, being committed to it, and then making a plan in order to get there.
And how do we get rid of those toxic thoughts? We wanted to lose weight, you hear people say, well, I lost it during the pandemic, but I guess y'all didn't see me do that, but no, it really probably didn't happen in 2021 or 2020 or 2018. So how do we get rid of those toxic thoughts, those toxic people, those toxic things that keep us from getting to our goals?
So it sounds like you're saying everything's toxic. So we're going to get rid of everything and everybody. So.
What the funny thing though is, so often people don't realize, in order to lose 50 or 100 pounds, everything around you has to change. There's not much that is going to stay the same, because eating is such an event that is communal, that's tied into the people that you're around, where you go, where you eat, the conversations you have. In order to lose 100 pounds, I tell people you need to expect to lose almost everything around you, because your whole life, when you wake up, when you go to bed, how do you prepare your food, who you talk to, people who, let's say, eat at Golden Corral are not the same people who are eating at Chipotle. All right. It's a different type of conversation that goes into overall weight loss, because so much has to change. So what you're saying is that an executive coach can help you work those individual goals out by setting a plan to engage in doing so.
Absolutely. And if I may, I want to share just another tip that people could use who are listening now. And one thing that I use with my clients is called a decisional balance chart. And I'm big on writing lists and writing things down, because I think it helps with visualizing things. And so what you would do is take a piece of paper and write out, kind of make it like a T-chart, but 4 quadrants. And in one quadrant, you would write pretty much the pros and cons of staying the same or making a change. So in essence, one column, or excuse me, like the top right-hand corner would be, what are some benefits of staying the same? And then another one, another box, you write, what are the benefits of making a change? And then the opposite, what would you lose by staying the same? And then what would you lose by making the change?
Wow.
And so by going through that exercise, you'll find that one box might be significantly fuller than the other. And then you'll have a little more clarity of, why am I making the decisions that I'm making? And so, and that could be applying to your I hate to use the word addiction, but food addiction is a real thing. So your addiction to food, or your lack of desire to want to exercise, or even you mentioned about the toxic friends or people in your life. So writing that out can help you kind of really gain awareness, and then you can take steps to move forward.
Great, great, great. So to the entire panel, some more questions from the audience. What can families do to protect their children from bereavement progressing to depression? So the bereavement is the loss, and there are a lot of losses so far as not only on family members, but loss of being able to go to school, loss of being able to hang out, loss of that normal activity that children would have without fear of contracting the virus. So how do we prevent bereavement sliding into the clinical issues of depression?
I guess I can chime in for that one. Okay, so first of all, like, let's kind of talk about depression a little bit and what that looks like. A lot of times what we see in depression is people become more withdrawn, people become more isolated, just kind of like almost just kind of hiding into themselves. And so in order to prevent a person from, going that far, we want to be present with them. We want to engage with them to protect them from, if you don't want someone to be isolated and withdrawn, the opposite of that is for them to be engaged, for you to be present, for you to have, communication, and for that person to feel supported. So I think, one way to help a kid not go too far down that road of depression is to be present with them, communicate, talk to them. We've heard several times before about creating like a safe environment. It's okay for you to have whatever emotion that you are having, and us to not judge that, just to to allow them to have the opportunity to feel like you're able to connect with them without necessarily judging them. That's one way.
And what would we, and I would say to Stephanie, with your family facing issues with COVID and children are in the middle of quarantine, not able to go to school and communicate, how do you feel like what strategies would you recommend for protecting the minds of our children and our families during this season that we're going through that doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon? You're on mute.
Okay, sorry about that. I may do something wild and crazy and have a night where, it's just really simple, and creating an environment where, they're going to be at home a lot. So we need to make home as fun as possible. So, it's small things, having them like pick dinner, or having Friday be the crazy night where they can stay up all hours of the night, or I'm participating in their world. If JJ likes to watch YouTube videos or do XYZ, mom and dad are going to participate and do an activity that's, that one child, that the one child, loves, and then we rotate. So we're just at home creating those. They're losing so much, as you said, but I need to have my home, and it's not perfect. It's constant. We work at it, and nothing is, we don't get it right all the time, but it's really focusing on the kids and having them kind of, explore and learn about themselves. We may go to Barnes and Noble and have them just explore and pick out something crazy that you wanted to buy, or we can do an activity at home that, each child has a rotation for every week, or each child may pick a dinner or something that we may cook, or each child has a special day. So we're really trying to funnel that energy into family time. And I know we can't be everything. Their kids are important, to them. I mean, their friends are important and they like to interact, and really allow them to act, safely online with their friends as well too. So, we're just trying to create the environment and allow them to be creative and to be themselves too, safety at home. So, of course they get tired of us. We have 3 teenagers, and they're just like, okay, mom, you're doing too much, need my space. But, they know that we're there, and that's the most important thing. So we don't always get it right, but we're doing things that each child would like to enjoy, rotating and having them input into the family life structure and schedule. And it's not always me dictating to them. I do give them some ground rules and some things of that nature, so it doesn't get too out of hand. But it's really a work in progress.
And what do you see that other families should know? What, so far as when your child is doing this and you see that now we need to engage in therapy. What are those things that you said to yourself that there's something going on here beyond my issue? They need help as well. Where do you see that?
For me, especially, and one of our children is autistic as well. So that's a whole nother level of getting to how the mind works. But really, when I didn't see my son cry at his grandfather's funeral, and I just saw lack of emotion, that was the trigger for me to understand, like, he's having a lot going on in his head that he cannot express himself. And that was a trigger for me. And I talked to his pediatrician. We actually got him into therapy. I didn't wait, at all. I was like, my son is having problems expressing himself. I know his grandfather was his best friend, and I know how close they were. And my littlest one, he was writing letters all, after his grandfather passed away. So I physically saw his outlet, and he had a journal, my youngest, but the teenagers were just, there was no physical emotion to their grandfather passing. And I knew how much he meant to them. So that, as a mom, something's wrong. I don't want to hear fine. I don't want to hear, I'm just going to go to my room, or I'm just going to take a walk. There's something else going on that I need to address, and I need to address it now. So as you said, change. And to me, it was lack of emotion, and these are, yes, he is, I'm not going to just shrug that off and he's a teenager and he's a boy. I was all over it. I was like, oh no, something's wrong. And we need to engage therapy like ASAP. And I've seen the progress through therapy, and my son was able to share with me a letter about how he felt about his grandfather passing. So he couldn't verbally tell me, but he was able to write it down. And Dr. Higgins, it was one of the most beautiful things that he was able to personify, communicate, and really express himself. There was a lot of thought and effort that was put into it. And it really made me cry, because it was everything at the time of the death and the trauma he was not able to verbalize. But through writing and through work and through his therapist, these are what these words mean. Let's use another word other than fine. We're going to eradicate fine. I'm tired of hearing fine. We're going to use this vocabulary words. And I should have brought it with me. We actually had a sheet of words. It's called List of Feelings that the therapist wanted. So Phoenix and them, they have to pick off this list. It's you probably can't see it, but we don't use fine in the house. You don't have to pick a word off the list.
And I think what's key is that engaging with your children, engaging with the family, that these are mental health issues. These are problems. It's okay to not be okay during this time. And mental health is so important. I did want to leave you all with the 6 things again. Get your COVID vaccine, wear a mask, keep your distance and stay 6 feet apart, avoid crowds. We want to make sure to consider, be careful before indoor gatherings. If you're still sick, stay at home and make sure to wash your hands. Bonus thing is make sure we do this every day. I want to thank you all so much for engaging with us. We could talk for another 2 hours. I'm so interested in hearing from these professionals, because I know I'm on plenty of webinars, but I love hearing what other people are doing and how other people think, and how we see that this is so important. So I want to turn this back over to Jordan to close us out, and thank all the panelists so much for sharing and giving your time to this evening. One thing, Dan, before we go, stay on, because we got to figure out what we're going to do with NAMI. and Jack and Jill and Black Psychiatrists of America, and how we can work together to keep this as an ongoing dialogue and conversation. So for the betterment of our people and our families. So we'll make sure we do that. So Jordan, could you please give us a few words?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Dr. Higgins. And thank you to all of our panelists. This has been such an incredible discussion of the importance of mental health, creating those safe spaces necessary to manage your mental health, access, resources, coaching, and just so much more. More of us are getting help, which I heard tonight. More of us are becoming understanding and embracing the importance of mental health, and it's critical. It's something we cannot ignore as we discuss this evening. It's the foundation, and if we aren't sound mentally, it's difficult to function and be successful in other areas of our lives. Let's remember to start the year off right. Make improving your mental health one of your New Year's resolutions. It's so necessary. Before I let y'all go, we have one more quick poll. Terrence, if you could launch that for me. What did you learn today, if anything? Just really quick. We want to hear from you. All right, Terrence, if we've got enough responses, you can go ahead and just close the poll and share the results. Let's see what people learned. All right, how to better support my children, family members dealing with stress. That's awesome. That's one of the reasons we wanted to have this webinar. So I'm so glad that a lot of you learned that today. Again, I want to thank you on behalf of the South Belt Houston chapter for attending tonight. You will receive an email communication from us asking for your feedback and to evaluate the webinar. We really value that feedback, so we would appreciate it if you do complete it when you receive it. And then finally, I just want to take a moment to thank our amazing sponsors. Without their support, these webinars or this series would not have been possible. So thanks again to the Jack and Jill of America Foundation for the grant, our very own South Belt Houston chapter and our grants committee, the Mary Susan Moore Medical Society, Chevron and the Chevron Black Employee Network, Texas Southern University, MD Anderson Cancer Center, and the Dr. Alana Trauma Institute for your generous support. Thank you again, everyone, for your time and for attending tonight. We sincerely appreciate it. Have a great evening.